The sound wasn't a knock. It was a demand. 3 sharp cracks against the solid oak door that echoed through the timber frame of the house like gunshots in a canyon, shattering the absolute silence I'd spent 18 months and nearly my entire savings account trying to build. I was sitting in the loft, a mug of coffee growing cold in my hand, staring out at the mist rolling off the Blue Ridge Mountains, finally feeling that deep, bone-settling peace that comes when you finish a project that everyone told you was impossible. But that banging noise, rhythmic and entitled, pulled me right back to reality. I looked down through the expansive glass prow of the A-frame, and there she was, standing on my front porch like she was posing for a magazine cover, wearing a pristine white puffer vest that had clearly never seen a day of actual work, clutching a clipboard against her chest like a weapon. Brenda Holloway, the self-appointed queen of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association, and behind her was a guy I didn't recognize, holding a smartphone horizontally, panning across the front of my cabin with the slow, deliberate motion of someone gathering evidence for a murder trial. My chest tightened, a physical squeeze that had nothing to do with the altitude and everything to do with the 6 months of passive-aggressive emails, the courtesy notices, and the vague threats about community aesthetic guidelines that had been filling my inbox. But this was different because she was actually here, standing on land that I owned, land that I knew for a fact. Because my wife Elena is the kind of lawyer who reads the footnotes in 500-page contracts for fun, was completely, totally, and legally outside the jurisdiction of her little kingdom. I set the coffee down, taking a second to breathe, trying to find the calm version of myself, the version that doesn't want to go downstairs and scream at a stranger. But then I saw her raise her fist to hammer on the door again, and I saw the cameraman zoom in on my unpainted cedar siding. And I realized this wasn't a neighborly visit. This was an invasion. I walked down the floating staircase. The wood cool under my socks, and I could see them clearly now through the side window. Brenda fixing her hair in the reflection of the glass, practicing a smile that didn't reach her eyes, a smile that was all teeth and tactical charm. I opened the door right as she was winding up for another assault on the wood, and the look on her face shifted instantly from annoyance to that terrifying, sugary sweetness that Southern women use when they're about to insult your entire lineage. "Good morning," she chirped, though it sounded more like a referee blowing a whistle. "I'm Brenda, president of the association. We've emailed, but I thought it was high time we had a face-to-face since you seem to be having some trouble receiving our communications." The guy with the phone stepped closer, practically shoving the lens in my face, and I felt that primal instinct to swat it away, but I kept my hands on the doorframe, blocking the entrance, not giving them an inch. "I got your emails, Brenda," I said, keeping my voice low, trying to match the stillness of the forest behind me. And I replied to them. "This is Parcel 9. It's private land. It was carved out of the master plan in 1985. I don't belong to your club, and I don't pay your dues, so I'm not sure why you're filming my house." Brenda laughed, a light, tinkling sound that was completely devoid of humor, and flipped a page on her clipboard with a manicured fingernail. "Oh, honey, that's a common misconception," she said, speaking to me like I was a slow child who had wandered into traffic. "The board reviewed the original plat maps last night. We found an easement clause from the developer that brings any structure within 500 yards of the main road under our visual harmony covenant. And this." She waved a hand dismissively at my cabin, my beautiful, hand-built sanctuary. "This unpainted wood, this industrial roofing, it's frankly an eyesore, and it's dragging down property values for the good people who actually follow the rules." The cameraman moved to the left, getting a shot of my mud-caked boots by the door, and Brenda stepped forward, trying to peer inside, her eyes scanning for more violations. "We're issuing a formal cease and desist on all habitation until you bring the exterior up to code," she said, thrusting a thick envelope toward me. "And there's a daily fine of $500, retroactive to when you broke ground. So, you're looking at about $40,000 currently, but if you sign this compliance agreement today, the board might be willing to waive the interest." I looked at the envelope, then at the camera, then at Brenda's triumphant face, and I felt a cold knot of dread in my stomach because even though I knew she was wrong, she sounded so sure, so official, and there is a terrifying power in the confidence of a bureaucrat who thinks they have the moral high ground. I didn't take the envelope. "Get off my property," I said, my voice shaking just a little, not from fear, but from the effort of not doing something I'd regret. If you're not off my land in 2 minutes, I'm calling the sheriff. Brenda's smile faltered for a microsecond, a glitch in the matrix, before hardening into a sneer. We'll be hearing from our attorneys, she said, turning on her heel with military precision. And smile for the newsletter, neighbor. You're going to be the don't example in this month's issue. They walked back to her oversized SUV, the cameraman walking backward to keep filming me until the last possible second. And as they drove away, kicking up dust that settled on my fresh deck, I stood there feeling violated, like someone had just walked into my living room and kicked over a lamp just to show me they could. I went back inside and called Elena. She was in the city, probably in the middle of a deposition, but she picked up on the second ring, her voice tight and professional. Tell me you didn't yell at her, she said, before I even said hello. I didn't yell, I said, sinking onto the couch, watching the dust settle outside. But she brought a camera crew, Elena. She served me a $40,000 fine. She says they found a clause from 1985. There was a silence on the other end of the line, not an empty silence, but a thinking silence, the sound of a very expensive, very dangerous brain shifting gears. Don't engage, Elena said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly calm. Don't post about it, don't reply to emails, don't even look at her if she drives by. I'm leaving the office now. I'll be there in 3 hours. And Jack, keep that envelope she tried to give you. Do not lose that envelope. When Elena arrived, the sun was already dipping behind the pines, casting long, bruised shadows across the driveway. She didn't even change out of her suit, just kicked off her heels at the door and walked straight to the kitchen table, opening her laptop with the focused intensity of a bomb disposal technician. She's an environmental lawyer, used to fighting massive corporations who try to poison rivers, so a suburban tyrant in a puffer vest wasn't exactly out of her league. But this was personal. This was our home. She spent 4 hours poring over digital county records, old scan maps that smelled like dust even through the screen, and the bylaws of the Whispering Pines HOA. I made dinner. I poured wine. I paced around the living room. But she didn't speak, just typed, highlighted, and occasionally let out a small, sharp exhale through her nose. Around midnight, she finally sat back, taking a sip of wine that had been sitting there for 2 hours. She's lying, Elena said softly. Not just mistaken, Jack. She's fabricating. She turned the laptop around to show me a PDF. This is the easement she mentioned. It refers to utility access for the power company, not visual covenants. And this. She pulled up another document, a scanned letterhead from a law firm called Stratton and Oakmont. This is the firm threatening us in the letter she left. Look at the address. I squinted at the screen. It was a P.O. box in a strip mall 3 towns over. I looked up the bar registry. Elena said, her eyes gleaming with a cold, predatory light. There is no attorney named Stratton licensed in this state. Brenda isn't just annoying. She's practicing law without a license. She's committing mail fraud, and she's trying to extort us. The next few days were a blur of tension. We stayed inside, blinds drawn, while Brenda's campaign escalated. She posted photos of our shanty on the community Facebook page, whipping the neighbors into a frenzy about property values plummeting because of the squatters on the ridge. I read the comments, against Elena's advice, and felt sick. People I'd waved to at the gas station were calling us trash, demanding the county intervene, suggesting someone should go up there and tear it down themselves. It's a terrifying thing to watch a mob form against you in real time. To realize how thin the veneer of civilization really is when people think they're protecting their investment. Then came the night that changed everything. It was Wednesday, 2 a.m. I woke up to the motion sensor floodlights blasting on, illuminating the front yard in harsh, white light. I shook Elena awake, and we crept to the window. Down by the property line, near the survey stakes, 2 figures were moving. One was holding a flashlight, the other was dragging something heavy. It was Brenda. I knew that walk, that entitled strut even in the dark. And the guy with her, the cameraman, was digging up the iron survey pin, the legal marker of our property line, and moving it 10 feet inward onto our land. They were literally redrawing the map to put our cabin inside their jurisdiction. I started to grab my phone to call 911, but Elena caught my wrist. Her grip was iron. No, she whispered, and in the moonlight, her face was terrifyingly calm. Let them do it. If the police come now, it's a trespassing dispute. If we let them finish, it's a felony. Tampering with federal survey markers is a federal crime, Jack. Let them dig their own grave. We watched in silence for 20 minutes as they moved the stakes, filmed themselves doing it, presumably to prove the new line later, and then crept away into the darkness. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I lay there listening to the wind, feeling the weight of the injustice pressing down on me. But Elena slept like a baby, the sleep of the righteous, the sleep of a hunter who knows the trap is already sprung. Friday morning was the deadline Brenda had given us. Pay up or we lien the property, the email had said. At 9 a.m. sharp, the SUV parade arrived. It wasn't just Brenda this time. She'd brought the whole court. The treasurer, a nervous-looking guy named Steve. The secretary, a woman named Patty who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. And of course, the cameraman. They marched up the driveway with the confidence of an execution squad. I opened the door, and Elena stepped out past me, wearing her court suit, holding a leather briefcase that looked heavy enough to bludgeon someone with. Brenda started talking before we even got to the porch steps. Mr. Miller, since we haven't received payment, we are here to officially. Ms. Holloway. Elena's voice cut through the air like a whip crack, stopping Brenda mid-sentence. I'm Elena Miller. I'm an attorney, and you are currently trespassing on private property. Brenda laughed, that same dismissive tinkle. We moved past that argument, honey. The survey lines clearly show. The survey lines you moved at 2:14 a.m. on Wednesday. Elena asked, her voice conversational, almost bored. Brenda froze. Her mouth stayed open, but the sound died in her throat. The cameraman lowered his phone. Elena didn't give her a second to recover. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers thick enough to choke a horse. We have high-definition video of you and Mr. Henderson removing federally protected survey markers, she said, handing a packet to the nervous treasurer, Steve. We also have a sworn affidavit from the county surveyor confirming the original lines. But that's actually the least of your problems. She handed another packet to Patty, whose hands were starting to shake. This is a cease and desist regarding your fraudulent legal representation. We confirmed with the State Bar that Stratton and Oakmont doesn't exist. Drafting fake legal threats on letterhead you created in Photoshop isn't a loophole, Brenda. It's fraud. It's forgery. And since you used the U.S. mail to send it, it's mail fraud. Brenda's face had gone the color of old ash. She looked at the other board members, waiting for them to back her up, but they were reading the documents, their eyes widening with every line. I was protecting the community, Brenda stammered, her voice thin and reedy. I have discretionary power as president, too. You have the power to embezzlement funds. Elena interrupted, pulling out the final document. Because we ran a title search on your legal defense fund that you've been billing the HOA for. The bank account is registered to a residential address. Your address, Brenda. The silence on the porch was absolute. The wind stopped. The birds stopped. Even the cameraman had stopped filming and was backing away slowly, trying to fade into the siding. Steve, the treasurer, looked up from the papers, his face red with a mix of shame and fury. Brenda, he said, his voice shaking. Is this true? You charged the reserve fund $42,000 for a law firm that doesn't exist. Brenda started to cry, but it wasn't the dignified weeping of a victim. It was the ugly, panicked sobbing of a bully who has been punched in the nose for the first time. I had to, she wailed. The property values. If we don't control them, everything falls apart. I did it for us. You did it for a kitchen renovation, Elena said, cold as ice. We saw the permit applications you filed last month. Same dollar amount, oddly enough. Elena took a step forward, and Brenda actually flinched, stepping back off the porch onto the gravel. You have two options, Elena said. Option A, we hand all of this. The video of the survey tampering, the fake legal letters, the financial records, to the district attorney this afternoon. You'll go to prison, Brenda. Real prison, not HOA prison. Or option B, you resign immediately. You dissolve the board. You issue a formal, public apology to us and every other homeowner you've harassed. And you repay every cent you stole. Brenda looked at Steve. Steve looked at the ground. She looked at Patty. Patty was already walking back to her car. The Queen had lost her court. Brenda nodded, a jerky, broken motion. Okay, she whispered. Okay. I'll resign. And you never set foot on this property again, I added, finally stepping forward. If I see you near my driveway, I'm not calling a lawyer. I'm calling the feds. They left in a chaotic scatter of vehicles, tires spinning on the gravel, leaving us alone in the quiet of the morning. I looked at Elena. She was leaning against the porch railing, the adrenaline fading, leaving her looking tired but triumphant. Did we just win? I asked. She smiled, a real smile this time. We didn't just win, Jack. We cleaned house. But the story didn't end there. We thought it was over, but small towns have long memories and deep secrets. 2 days later, a man I'd never met drove his beat-up pickup truck up our driveway. He got out slowly, looking at the house like he was afraid it might bite him. I went out to meet him, expecting another fight, but he took off his hat, twisting it in his hands. His name was Tom, he said. He ran a landscaping business in the valley. I heard what happened, he said, looking at his boots. With Brenda. I nodded, waiting. She ruined my dad, Tom said, his voice thick with emotion. 5 years ago. She claimed his work wasn't up to code, refused to pay invoices, spread rumors that he was stealing from clients. He lost the business. He died thinking he was a failure. Tom looked up at me, and his eyes were wet. I just wanted to shake the hand of the man who finally stopped her. Nobody else had the guts, or the money, or the smarts. He reached into his truck and pulled out a bottle of whiskey. This was my dad's favorite. I want you to have it. We stood there on the porch, drinking cheap whiskey out of coffee mugs, listening to him tell stories about other families Brenda had pushed out, other contractors she'd stiffed. It turned out her reign of terror went back a decade. We weren't just fighting for a cabin. We had accidentally avenged half the mountain. The fallout was spectacular. The district attorney picked up the case anyway. Apparently, Steve the treasurer had grown a spine and turned over the books himself to avoid being an accomplice. Brenda was charged with grand larceny and fraud. The local paper ran the story on the front page, with the headline, HOA Tyrant Toppled. The for sale sign went up in front of Brenda's house a week later. She couldn't afford the legal fees and the restitution. But the moment that stuck with me, the moment I replay in my head when I'm sitting up here watching the sunset, happened about a month after the arrest. I was at the grocery store in town, grabbing supplies. I turned the corner of the cereal aisle and ran right into her. Brenda. She looked 10 years older. Her hair wasn't done, she was wearing sweatpants, and she looked small, defeated. For a second, our eyes locked. I expected hate. I expected anger. But all I saw was fear. She flinched, pulling her cart back, waiting for me to say something, to gloat, to humiliate her the way she had tried to humiliate us. And in that moment, I realized something profound about power. The people who crave it the most are usually the ones who feel the most powerless inside. She had built a fortress of rules and regulations to hide her own insecurity, and we had torn it down with a few sheets of paper and the truth. I didn't say anything. I didn't smile. I just nodded, once, a simple acknowledgement of her existence, and walked past her. I didn't need to win again. The silence was loud enough. We finished the cabin. I stained the wood a dark walnut that blends into the trees, not because she told me to, but because I wanted to. The new HOA board is boring, efficient, and leaves everyone alone, exactly how it should be. But sometimes, when the wind blows through the valley at night, I think about the thin line between a community and a cult, between rules that protect us and rules that control us. We all want to live in a nice neighborhood. We all want our property values to go up, but at what cost? How much freedom are we willing to trade for visual harmony? It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If someone knocked on your door tomorrow with a clipboard and a smile, claiming they knew what was best for your home, would you know your rights? Would you have the courage to stand in the doorway and say no? Or would you do what most people did for 10 years on this mountain? Pay the fine, paint the fence, and hope the alligator eats you last? Let me know in the comments. Have you ever dealt with a Brenda? Where do you draw the line between a good neighbor and a tyrant? And honestly, seeing how broken she was at the end, do you think we should have just let it go once she resigned? Or did she deserve every bit of the ruin that came her way? I read every comment, and I really want to know what you would have done. Thanks for listening. And remember, good fences make good neighbors, but a good lawyer makes sure you get to keep the fence. Stay safe out there.